Molly here. Yeah, Molly there. Go new me, Molly. This House is in session. Prior to the suspension on the 1st of March 2023, this House was in Standing Finance Committee. We returned to Standing Finance Committee.
This House is in Standing Finance Committee.
Mr. Chairman, Head 83, Ministry of Agriculture and Food Security, in the amount of $81,210,034.
Honourable Member for St. Philip South.
Mr. Chairman, I beg permission for my team to join me in the Well of Parliament for the presentation and consideration of this head.
So granted, Honourable Member.
Thank you.
I just gone, yeah. Hold on.
Let me welcome the Minister and his team to the well, and I will proceed outlining to you the procedure for this session. Honourable Minister, you are allowed an overview of the ministry for 10 minutes. Thereafter, every question that is posed to the minister, he has 5 minutes to respond. Members of the team, before you begin to speak in this session, you identify yourself and your title. and you're given 3 minutes to respond to a question that may be posed as directed or once you're referred to by the Honourable Minister. Honourable members of the House are quite familiar or should be familiar with this procedure by now. You are allowed 3 minutes for your question. If at any point in time you have exceeded that time, or you have in your preamble, you're reaching that time frame, I will let you know. You're allowed 3 questions outside of the follow-up questions that may have coming out of a particular response from the minister and his team. Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start the session by first introducing the team here with me. To my right is Mr. Terry Bascom, the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security. To my left is Ms. Keely Holder, Chief Agriculture Officer. Behind me, the officers are Mr. Frederick Ennis, CEO of BADMC, Senator Shanika Roberts-Odle, CEO Acton, Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority, Mr. Orlando Atherley, CEO, BAMC, Dr. Mark Trotman, Chief Veterinary Officer, Dr. Beverly Wood, Director, Government Analytical Services, Mr. Michael James, Senior Agriculture Officer, Mr. Glenn Marshall, Senior Agriculture Officer, Mr. Brett Taylor, Senior Agriculture Officer, Mr. Sherlock King, Manager of Markets, and to join us will be Dr. Leroy McLean, Consultant on our Black Belly Sheep Project. In reflecting on the year 2022-2023, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to note that we did have more positives than negatives, but we all must face the reality within the global context of what we had to navigate, and even in the domestic environment, the challenges that we faced. I would therefore like, Mr. Chairman, to present to you from 3 basic standpoints: the global context, the regional context, and the domestic context. The three main developments affected agricultural production in Barbados during the review period are climate change, challenges with soil quality and erosion, frequency and intensity of natural disasters, drier dry seasons and wetter wet seasons, rising temperatures, and the evolution of pests. COVID-19 pandemic was one, and all of us are familiar with the challenges that we face. And this impacted international travel, business, and employment activity, especially in tourism and wholesale and retail sectors. Shipping or trade logistics, fiscal imbalances mainly due to government's increased expenditure on healthcare. And then we also have the Russia-Ukraine war, which exacerbated prevailing trade distortions, particularly in relation to maize, wheat, fertilizer. Those are main ingredients in agriculture. And if we were to look at the regional context, we would all agree that within such an environment, then the linkages to regional development, regional trade, regional agriculture would also be negatively impacted. But if that wasn't enough, we also had some natural disasters to contend with. And we had, all of us know, the ash fall from the eruption of the La Soufrière volcano in St. Vincent and the Grenadines in April 2021, followed by Hurricane Elsa, July 2021, which caused substantial destruction in agriculture, damage to infrastructure as well, and many small farmers having to go through grappling with the consequences of the event. And then, of course, within the region, we are working with the Agriculture Subcommittee on the CARICOM 25 by 25 vision, which is putting us in a position to be able to reduce our food import bill by 25% by the year 2025. And of course, there's an established ministerial task force that is forging ahead with this. And so far, I must report to this honorable chamber that things are moving according to plan, and this target is indeed achievable and may be surpassed. Certainly here at the Ministry of Agriculture, we have set ourselves a target of 26% reduction, and that too can go up once we can get things moving. When I looked at our 2018 manifesto, I was challenged to deliver a number of things in agriculture based on our commitment to the people of Barbados and indeed to all of our stakeholders. One of the things that we were challenged to do was to make sure that we looked at the restructuring of the sugar industry, and that is an ongoing process, but that process will soon come to closure. We also had to move ahead with legislation for the protection of crops, which is familiarly known among stakeholders as the predial larceny protection legislation. And then we also had to establish allotment gardens across Barbados, using Lears as one of the locations, Pine Basin as another one, in order to introduce allotment gardens in Barbados. And then we have to look at incentivizing the use of greenhouses, hydroponics, and new efficient technologies that are less water intensive and high in crop production. Of course, we had to develop a black belly sheep industry, and we've also entered into an agreement with Guyana, where we are exporting black belly sheep to Guyana to help expand the population and give us a chance to take advantage of the value added, whilst being able to bring local lamb to the domestic space and indeed to the tourism sector, so that we will be serving local lamb and reducing our imports of lamb. And then, of course, we saw the transition to modern technology in the agricultural sector, which makes lives of farmers easier, attracts young people, and contributes to the country's sustainable development through greater food security. And only yesterday, I was looking at SDG 2, which is our Sustainable Development Goal. And I must say that we are, in fact, on target in tackling all of the requirements under the Sustainable Development Goal, and well ahead of making sure we can achieve the 2030 target, even though I do recognize globally that given the setback with COVID, the Russia-Ukraine war, and climate change, globally, overall, we may very well miss the 2030 goal. The Ministry of Agriculture has been doing tremendous work in making sure that we can keep farmers engaged, and we've started the Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive, which is commonly known as the FEED program, to do a number of things. One, to make sure that we can give training to people so that they can treat agriculture as a viable career option, equally help them to understand what is required to get involved in agriculture, and then give them a sense of business in that training as well, so it can be treated as a business. We've also made sure that we work with farmers to increase our crop production, and in order for us to be able to achieve this, we were heavily dependent on the work of our technical officers, our extension officers, and indeed the Chief Agricultural Officer, the Permanent Secretary, and the team to make sure that we can deliver on this. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to report that we have seen increased production in a number of crops that we hadn't seen this type of growth in over a period of time. Sweet peppers, an increase of 3% over 2021, or a total 474,463.73 kilograms. Beet, an increase of 6% over 2021. Onions, an increase of 6% over 2021. Cabbage, an increase of 7%. Cucumbers, an increase of 8%. Eggplant, an increase of 17%. Pawpaw, an increase of 21%. Pumpkin, an increase of 22%. Cantaloupe, an increase of 3%. Carrots, an increase of 32%. Eddos, I've been speaking about Eddos for a long time. We are now seeing the return of Eddos, moving from 201,045 kilos in 2021 to 287,629.28 kilos in 2022. Watermelon, an increase over 2021 from 871,260 to 1,457,939.99 kilos. And yam also is one of those crops that we had started to see some decline in, but with the good work of the team at CARS and the team in the ministry and indeed the stakeholders, we are able to see an increase of 70%, moving from 580,639.89 kilos to 988,969.88. Chinese cabbage also had an increase of 80%, moving from 124,577.02 to 224,256.67. And muskmelon from 7,484.35 kilos to 38,356.16, or 42% increase. This, Mr. Chairman, represents solid work that has been done in the ministry and indeed within the sector to be able to propel us forward in being able to deliver for Barbados and reach towards our food security and, of course, the second plank within the ministry, our nutrition objectives as well. I must say to you, Mr. Chairman, that we have seen also some movement within the livestock sector. And we do know that livestock is very topical right now, given the fact that we are grappling with the increase in cost, particularly as it relates to feed prices. But I'm happy to report to you that commodities like eggs and poultry continue to improve. We are seeing increases. Eggs have moved from 2,605,662.07 kilos to 3,099,413. And chicken, when we looked at chicken, based on the amount of chickens that were sold in form of baby chicks, we recognized that when we finished the calculations on chickens as well, there should be an increase in production. Mr. Chairman, I strongly believe that the activities within the ministry should be highlighted so that the country gets a full understanding of what was required in order for us to achieve our objectives. We did state that we were going to develop a catchment pond at river in St. Philip because we recognized the challenges that the farmers were facing over there. And we kept our commitment and was able to deliver a catchment at Brown's Pond at river in St. Philip, which would carry 6 million gallons of water at a cost of $1.1 million to service 60 acres to start with. And there would also be a phase 2 of this project, which would then give us an opportunity to connect the other farmers at river. At Haggards, we also put in a 4 million gallons reservoir, completely lined at a cost of $235,000 to service 40 acres of land, giving us a national fruit orchard at Haggards and putting us back to the days of the 70s when people were able to go there to get a wide variety of local Barbadian fruit. And the honorable member for the city is looking at me because he knows only too well the value of Haggards. At Lairs, we have a reservoir with 21 million gallons to service 77 acres of crop production, and this also includes our allotment gardening. The honorable member for Christchurch West will be happy about this because he's the one that was pushing for this in cabinet, I'm happy to note that we have delivered on it, and currently we have farmers engaged at layers. We are completing the clearing, and of course, you will see layers in full production, certainly by middle of this year. The cost of the delivery to the commercial farmers at layers is $3.5 million, and this includes a 1.1 megawatt floating PV system at a cost of $2 million when fully installed. At Bordens, there's a 7 million gallons at a cost of US $140,000 to service approximately 50 acres of land. And at Bordens, we're also doing a recreational project as well that can serve as a new tourist attraction in Barbados. And this is set also to be completed by the middle of this year. The challenges we had at Borden would have been because of the persistent rainfall. It was difficult to mobilize heavy equipment in that area. But we are forging ahead and would certainly be able to complete that project, giving Barbados a new agri-tourism project, in addition to all the others that we've been examining and looking at with ICA. In addition to this, we've heard over and over about breaking hard pan soils, and I'm happy to report that the ministry, in fact, has embarked on this work, not only on government properties, but also for private farmers as well. And so far, we've been able to do subsoiling on 1,163 acres of land right across Barbados, and this also includes schools. Must state at this point in time that we are pleased to note that we have signed an MOU with Conscious Planet in February 2022 to promote the importance of soil health and collaborate on work towards sustaining soil health and maintaining soil organic content at a minimum of 3%. We're also involved in FAO project, Caribbean Soil Management, for restored watersheds and sustainable food systems. You do know already that the sugar crop has already started, and we've projected 107,000 tons of cane to go to the factory, and we can speak more about that today, Mr. Chairman. And then, of course, the Farmers Empowerment and Enfranchisement Drive is still moving ahead, and so far I'm pleased to report that at Mount Poyer, at Bath in St. John, at Wakefield in St. John, at Spencer's in Christchurch, or on the border in St. Philip, and right across Barbados, we have been placing farmers on land and continuing to work with the feed program, and I wish to commend the work of the officers at the BADMC for getting us through this project. We've started a project as well, Mr. Chairman, that speaks to kitchen gardens or community gardens, and this is called Project Care. Project Care is designed for us to be able to reach communities. Care meaning community agriculture response and empowerment. And what we are seeking to do is to get communities back together. Of course, this should be of considerable interest to the Honourable Member for the city as well. Bringing communities together to make sure that they can, one, have the opportunity to socialize. Many of our older people stay indoors simply because there is really not much going on in the community, and that's the reason why you will see so many of them come out for Q in the community. But we are hoping to be able to bring back that fellowship amongst the senior people by allowing for these community gardens to take place. And I have to thank the BAMC and the BADMC for helping us to move this project along. This project so far has given us over 40 small farmers across the island benefiting from clearing and cultivation services on over 40 acres of land as well. And they also got the inputs. Some got seedlings, okra, watermelon, squash, and cucumber, clean planting material and fertilizers, and we were able to work with our private partner, Gales Hatchery, to be able to give out 8,000 baby chicks across Barbados for families, particularly the most vulnerable in this country, to be able to rear chickens as a source of income and indeed a source of getting food supplies. And at the Pine Basin, we have committed to 34 allocations of allotment gardens and 6 acres of land to give people in the surrounding area an opportunity to be able to go there and do active farming as well. Our black belly sheep program, this expansion program is being accelerated with the assistance of Guyana under the St. Barnabas Accord. As part of the accord, Barbados is expected to export 1,000 animals to Guyana, and to date, I'm happy to report that we have already exported 493 sheep, and the others are expected to be delivered by the end of March or April. In terms of a legislative framework, Mr. Chairman, we have done a significant amount of work there as well. We've done work in terms of Animal Diseases and Importation Amendment Act 2022. This was when we were grappling with African swine fever. We are also we also have done the Protection of Agricultural Products Act, which is what I referred to earlier. The chairman of project here has just arrived, the Honourable Member for St. Michael East. We've started our work on our sanitary and phytosanitary program, and so far we have done the Plant Protection Bill. This was passed on December 14th, 2022. We've also done the Animal Health and Veterinary Public Health Bill. This was passed on December 14th, 2022. And now we are about to complete the Food Safety and Quality Bill. This bill is significantly advanced and is expected to come to Parliament either this month or early next month. And then the Three Houses Spring Act, this is an act that dates back to 1713. So we are truly Electrolux because we are now cleaning up all of what was outstanding at River, and we are expecting to be able to bring this, repeal the old Three Houses Spring Act and bring a completely new act to this honorable chamber this year. The Barbados-Guyana Food Terminal, the process has begun. We have 2 private sector persons who have expressed an interest in participating. We've got the designs, and we've started the process with town planning to make sure we get the permission to construct. The aquaculture project at River, I'm happy to report that that project has been commissioned. The equipment has been installed, and we expected to see the facility ready for production by the end of this month. And we've just completed the work on a state-of-the-art abattoir where the prospectus is available to the private sector for them to be able to invest in that abattoir and give us an opportunity to be able to have our own specialty cuts rather than import all of the cuts that we currently use in the tourism industry and indeed across Barbados. Our medicinal cannabis licensing authority, we have been able to get that up and going. So far, we've had 29 licenses from 12 applicants and are currently at various stages of processing at the BMC LA, 7 cultivators, 6 import, 5 retail, 4 transport, 3 export, 3 processor, 1 research and development. It is expected that by the end of March, the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority will collect between Barbados 1.5 to 2.1 million in application and license fees. And I said, there goes the naysayers who were saying that this couldn't be done, that we had the wrong approach. People must recognize there was no business during 2020 and 2021 and a major part of 2022. And Mr. Chairman, sometimes it makes me sad to hear the comments that are being delivered by people who are either ill-informed, not informed, or choose to be mischievous. But whichever way it is, here is the proof of what has been taking place at the Barbados Medicinal Cannabis Licensing Authority. And we have approved by Cabinet the Agricultural Production Acceleration Plan 2023, which will see us developing a plan that would allow for us to export sweet potatoes to the UK. And our target is to be able to export 100 million over an established period of time. It is not going to happen overnight. I don't want to give anybody the impression that this is going to happen overnight. In this current estimates, we have $15 million allocated for us to set up a germplasm bank at the home agricultural station, which will be second to none in the region, and should be able to provide us with all of the cling planting material that we need for Barbados. And indeed, we should be able to help our neighbors within CARICOM as well. And then for climate change and agriculture policy, Cabinet has approved on September the 29th for climate change and agriculture policy as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm pleased to report overall improvement within the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security, and I'm pleased also to report to the country that we have met our manifesto commitments, surpassed them, and are on to new work as well. And I am also glad to note that the team has remained committed with me in achieving our objectives in order for us to achieve our food and nutritional security goals, whilst at the same time committing to SDG 2. I'm obliged to you, Chair. I beg to move that this head now stand part.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Moving to our question and answer session. Honourable Member for St. Michael North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to one and to all. Good morning to you, Minister, and your team. Let me first start off by giving you a sincere congratulations. I feel I call you the dream team, because I don't think that agriculture has ever received this level of attention, this level of effort, this level of vision and strategy. And your results speak for themselves, Minister, and I think that you must be applauded for the excellent work that you've been doing in this ministry. Excellent work. And, from my position as an outsider many years ago, looking on at what was happening within this honorable house and how ministries and ministers operated and functioned before, it always seemed like if agriculture was something just pushed to the side. It was a ministry that was never really given the level of attention and given that strategic position of importance within a functioning society. But you have brought agriculture to the fore, and I think from the time our Prime Minister, the Honourable Member for St. Michael North East, and Prime Minister would have created this ministry and added food security as one of the tenets thereof, I think that that was a pivotal moment of transformation for us as a nation, and I think that you are helping us as a nation to become more secure. So I applaud you and your team for that. And you alluded to, and I'm going to give you the opportunity, Minister and team, to expand for us now at this stage on the relationship with Guyana. Of course, as a minister who holds responsibility for industry in our country, in our government, I'm particularly interested in this one because I hear mention of the food terminal. And the fact that we know that Guyana has for many years, as a part of our Caribbean community, has been seen as the food basket of the CARICOM of the Caribbean. They have rich expanses of land. They have almost every mineral and asset you can think of. And it is, of course, strategic for us to link with them, given our small geographical size and their large geographical size. It's important for us to see how we can strategically link with them. So I was interested to find out from you how it is that we are seeking to use that relationship with Guyana through the food terminal to boost our exports of our local production. And I want to twin with that all in one as one question so we can then go to the second one. How is it that we are actually going to be utilizing our local production in our International Food Science Center, which also is one of the key, I think, and strategic and pivotal achievements of this administration through my ministry and the BIDC at Sport Barbados, where we would have launched that late last year, that provides local agricultural producers the opportunity to bring their raw materials into a space to have them process through agro-processing, converting them into new products like seasonings and condiments, et cetera, and to move that product from Barbados all across the Caribbean. And I will say this in closing for this first question, Minister, and you must take part credit for this as well, because we would have had a case and a scenario at the International Food Science Center where one person producing condiments in Barbados, I'm not going to try to be too descriptive, but one person producing condiments in Barbados would have been producing at about 300 units. The chairman is smiling at me, so I'm going to wrap up. He was been producing at 300 units per week. And that was, of course, satisfying his local demand, but he was still a bit stretched. 300 units in his own little space. And he came to the International Food Science Center, and in one day, in a couple hours, he was able to produce 3,000 units. And he was able to move, in that moment, from just supplying to local producers to then being able to export into the Caribbean region as well. So I want to hear more from us relative to the food terminal, that connection with Guyana, and how we're going to be boosting our local production to help our people to grow and expand.
Thank you, Honourable Member. What I'm going to do, first of all, is ask the Permanent Secretary to speak about the work we had to do with Guyana in order to be able to harmonize our relationship, because there are lots more to this than what meets the eye, and certainly people are not aware of many of the challenges that you will have by moving agricultural products from border to border. And we were able to establish a committee that helped us to be able to settle most, if not all, of the issues related to moving agricultural produce between the two countries. And then I would let the Chief Agriculture Officer speak to the operation of the food terminal. You'll be interested to note that it has similar tenets to what you mentioned in the Innovations Food Science Center. And because we are a good logistics hub, given the fact that we probably have more flights to the UK than most other CARICOM countries, to the US, to Canada, and then with the ability to connect to other flights as well, it makes Barbados the perfect location for us to be able to get involved in export, and Guyana the perfect location in order to give us scale in terms of production. And then when we combine that with the potential to also tap into Roraima, which is just across from Guyana, moving through LATAM, then you can see the potential for us to be able to expand, giving us real scale in production, but at the same time using the logistics that we have here in Barbados to be able to tap into the diaspora for sure, and then give us new markets in order for us to be able to export. So I would let the Permanent Secretary speak first about the work that was done between us and Guyana, and then the Chief Agriculture Officer, and Dr. Leroy McLean can also at the same time update on the Black Belly Sheep Program.
And thank you, Minister, Chair. My name is Terry Bascom, and I'm the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security. Now, I know you only have 3 minutes, so I'm gonna try to be succinct as possible. And from where I sit, the relationship with Guyana, I would prefer to explain it within the context of the strategic reposition of the agriculture sector in Barbados. Minister Ishmael, you made a reference to strategic positioning when you spoke. And we have to accept that when we look at Barbados, we're a small country, we're limited in resources. Much of the agriculture that we're still involved in is open field, requires lots of land. And we also know that there is a significant demand for land for other areas of development activities in Barbados, housing, renewable energy, etc. It therefore meant that the government, through the Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security, had to find strategic ways to expand our production base. We all know the historical relationship between Barbados and Guyana. I don't need to go back to that. And we also know the congruence in terms of the vision of the Honourable Prime Minister and President Irfan Ali of Guyana. And that paved the way, Chair, for the two countries to sign St. Barnabas Accord, which identified several areas of activity, but for the purpose of this exercise today, we will focus on agriculture. That relationship through the program speaks to several areas of agriculture: crop production, livestock, aquaculture. You'll hear later about the shrimp projects, etc. The minister alluded to them earlier. But the whole idea was to combine with Guyana, representing that they have what we don't, the land mass. They have that critical land mass, because the only way that we're going to really make an impact on agriculture production and return the sector to the day when it used to really contribute in a measurable way to GDP is through scale. So that was the main strategic purpose. Now, I should say to you, the minister also made a reference to the Ministerial Task Force. And while that comprises members from throughout CARICOM, I have to admit that the main impetus in that group comes from the Barbados-Guyana relationship. The reality is, it is sad to say, but if you had to wait for all the countries in CARICOM to get on board, we are not going to advance very far. The decision was taken strategically and objectively that if Barbados and Guyana combine their energies, forces, and vision, that together they can at least start the ball rolling, as we would say, with the hope that others will join. And I can say to you that that has actually reached a stage of fruition where that relationship has proven to the others in the region that this can work, that countries can come together for a common cause and try to achieve some level of objectivity. Now, I would want, though, before I close, to just make reference to some of the key areas that are being discussed within the context of that relationship between Barbados and Guyana and the broader context with the Special Ministerial Task Force on Food Security. For example, transportation. We do recognize that it is okay to produce more, but then you can't consume everything you produce. You have to be able to export, move goods across the region, and that is one of the challenges that we have. As we all know, we have some serious roadblocks as it comes to easy transport of goods throughout the region. I believe we are coming closer to a solution, and I will leave perhaps the minister to speak to that if he so desires. Another issue that came up as a result of that was the whole notion of sorry, application of crop insurance and the availability of crop insurance for our farmers. The reality is that when persons invest lots of time and energy and financial resources and effort, and they do not see results almost immediately, they tend to recoil, they consider themselves a failing, and then it becomes difficult for even the ministry to convince them that they should go again. One of the ways to encourage the farmers throughout the region to get into agriculture and to produce more is to provide some level of protection for them so that at least they can hedge some of their losses. And we know where we are with respect to hurricanes and those kinds of exogenous developments. So we have to make sure that we try to provide a mechanism within which our farmers can feel protected and produce more. Another big one, the minister made a reference to it. We've made some advancements in terms of the legislative framework, but again, within that mechanism with CARICOM in Guyana and Barbados, we've also developed an SPS framework that would allow for products of plant and animal origin to move seamlessly throughout the region without being obstructed because of technical barriers to trade. So those are some of the main things that we would have achieved as a result of partnering with the Guyana. It's a very strategic approach to ensuring that we produce with scale and contribute in a meaningful way to the economy or the socio-economic development of this country.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Keely Holder. I'm the Chief Agricultural Officer at the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Nutritional Security. As it relates to the operations of the food terminal, first of all, I want to contextualize it by looking at the fact that Barbados is logistically considered as a hub for interregional trade, particularly in the OECS countries. Currently, as it stands, we import most of our fresh produce from the United States, from Miami. This takes about 12 days from ordering to actually get here. This presents a food security challenge for us. Not only a risk in terms of about a 12-day turnaround time with a 1-week shipping time, but there's also the impact that you're supplying all of your fresh produce from one area. The relationship with Guyana and with CARICOM in general is strategic because it means that we are relying more on the region for our food. Specifically for the food terminal, the opportunity then exists for us to set up a terminal here in Barbados, which would allow us to move produce from Guyana, which is PS indicated, has a large land mass, into Barbados and onto the other OECS countries, potentially onto other trading partners where the region does a lot of business, US, UK, Europe, etc. The key thing here for Barbados is that we tend to have a significant amount of airlift. So typically it's about 17 flights a week in off-peak period and more than 30 flights a week. And from what I understand from Grantley Adams International Airport is that those flights are going back half full every single day. So this creates an opportunity for us to export and move product not only from Barbados but to US, UK and Europe, into Europe in particular. So the opportunity to move product from Guyana, which does not have that significant kind of airlift, into Barbados and then onward to other destinations is a significant opportunity. What it also does, particularly for agro-processing, as Minister Ishmael was asking, is that it opens up the opportunity for greater agro-processing above and beyond what we would be able to do in Barbados. Before you can get into agro-processing, you need to have an affordable and abundant supply of raw materials. And that is a critical point. It has been a critical point for the manufacturing sector. So the food terminal creates an opportunity to boost our agro-processing capacity above and beyond what we are currently doing. It also, at the national level for farmers, is also going to create an opportunity because inherent in the food terminal is also going to be a national pack house, which would allow us to receive more product from our Barbadian farmers, allow us to hold and store for a longer period of time, which also speaks to the aspect of food security because we are now increasing our fresh produce stores in Barbados. And it also then creates an opportunity for our local farmers to participate in opportunities for export. So not only is it addressing food security by sourcing from our nation nationally, but also regionally. So we're looking at a two-phase approach. And of course, one of the things that we would want to encourage is that there are certain things that we know Barbados does well here. So we want to maximize the production of those things, and Minister Weir would have spoken about the CARICOM 25 by 2025. We have targeted the top 12 items that we import to be able to replace here and have that security of those items. But when we look at the food import bill, there are other items which Barbados cannot grow here or don't grow well here or cost effectively, things like pineapples, for example, oranges, citrus. To a certain extent, we do have a shortage of things like bananas and plantains at particular points. This is where we can partner with our sister and brother nations, starting with Guyana and Suriname, and use that to be able to augment our national food supply, and in so doing, we are then building out our capacity for food security.
Chair, I crave your permission to make one correction to something that I said earlier. Muskmelons, the increase was actually 412% and not 41%.
Minister, you wanted to have someone else respond to the question, I think, or was that it? Just the two? I think you had said Dr. McLean was going to say something as well, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, Dr. McLean will speak to the progress we've made with Guyana with the Black Belly Sheep project. And I'm hoping that he can also inform us that if there were some lambing since we did the sheep.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Minister. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. So far, we have exported 493.
Dr. McLean, I know you well. But
Yes.
for the records of Hansard, would you please introduce yourself?
Yes, sir. I'm Leroy McLean, consultant with the Ministry of Agriculture. Yes, we have exported so far 493 sheep to Guyana, and many questions have been raised as to whether this is a viable operation or not. I must say that it provides Barbados with great opportunity to expand the Barbados black belly sheep population. Since, as has been mentioned before, the resources that are available in Guyana, we don't have here. We have large land masses, the forages which are available there, water, which is essential for development of the population. So if we can have this relationship with Guyana, and I just want to explain that it is not the case for the benefit of members and the general public. This is not a case of Barbados giving away sheep to Guyana. Only this morning I was accosted by, or approached by a lady who said, why are we giving sheep to Guyana and not giving every Barbadian too?
I'm glad, Dr. McLean, and I would want you to really emphasize that, because in my rural constituency, I get a lot of those questions. So I really want you to take a bit of time and explain this to the Barbadian public and the youngsters who are looking for black belly sheep through the feed program.
Yes, sir. Well, interestingly enough, sir, whereas there are many people in Barbados who, when they raise questions about the black belly sheep, and you ask them, have you ever kept a sheep yet? They say no. Have you ever eaten black belly lamb? No. But suddenly everyone has a great interest from the time we started to export the sheep. But the whole intention is that by partnering with Guyana, we have, as I said before, the resources which we can use to develop the population. And in doing so, when we have a larger population there, as has been pointed out by earlier by other officials, not necessarily here, but before, we can then slaughter the sheep there in Guyana. The carcasses are exported back to Barbados, where we can have the specialty cuts and the value added, which can increase the revenue base for Barbados. In addition, the leather from the black belly sheep hides is of extremely high quality. And the intention is also to develop a leather industry from the black belly hides. We can't do this if we don't have that critical mass of sheep. The average black belly hide is only about 6 square feet or so. Now, which means that we need large numbers. And if you're going to get the population up to that 1 million, which the Prime Minister has suggested we should reach, we cannot do that in Barbados alone. And therefore, this is why it is essential that we get into the Guyana. Now, I would also like to suggest that Barbadian farmers who are interested in sheep production should also consider the possibility of locating to Guyana. As far as I know, the St. Barnabas Accord makes provision for Barbadian farmers to move to Guyana. But it seems as though we generally believe that the only countries we should leave Barbados and go to are the United States, Canada, or somewhere in Europe. But there is great opportunity for Barbadian farmers to move to Guyana, and not necessarily as individuals, but we can form cooperatives where we can go there, settle in a particular area, and the government of Guyana, to the best of my knowledge, is willing to provide the infrastructure which will be necessary for farmers to settle there. So there's great opportunity for the development of the sheep population in Guyana, and I would like to suggest that, strongly recommend that our farmers, particularly our younger people, take up the opportunity to expand their operations in Guyana.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Minister and team, for those responses. And I'm very happy to hear about the plans relative to the food terminal and the overall strategic collaboration with Guyana, our neighbor state. And I believe that this will redound to the benefit of many of our people here in Barbados. And now brings me to the second and final question really for me at this point in time, and it relates to our domestic efforts to increase and expand our production of agricultural products here in Barbados. And I want to call it domesticating agriculture. And I know you have many programs like FEED and others. I think there are one or two great initiatives that your ministry is running point on to help our people here in Barbados to grow what they eat and to eat what they grow. And we all understand the importance of this when it comes to sustainability and food sovereignty and food security, that each Barbadian should be encouraged to grow something so that they could, one, save some money, but at the same time they can improve their own health because they know what they're putting into their own bodies. So I want to find out, because I have many people in St. Michael North, in my constituency in Eden Lodge, in Cave Hill. Even though we're not a rural constituency, there are many persons within the constituency that would like to utilize the small space that they have. And even as you answer this question, you may want to zoom in on those different types and innovative structures that are being utilized, because gone are the days where you needed to have a big backyard or a big front yard to do your planting and your growing in your kitchen garden. We have a lot of innovative technologies that are being used now, and this is an opportunity for you to really share with Barbadians what strategies that the ministry has to roll out those types of apparatus to be able to make sure that our people can have an opportunity to be a part of this transformation that's taking place in the area of domesticating agriculture. So feed, other programs, you can share some information on that, and how do our people, our constituents, how do they become a part of those programs?
Thank you, Honourable Member. First of all, what I would do is to just give an update on what we're doing, and then I would allow for the officers at the BADMC to comment on feed and project care, and then for the Chief Agriculture Officer to speak to our accelerated growth plan for 2023. So under the feed program, any person can register, be trained, and then be given access to land. The biggest challenge we've had so far is being able to find land with water. So you'll find that the government had to invest a lot in putting in the 1,000-gallon tanks so that people can get access to water. This has slowed down the process, but the program is still ongoing. So people in St. Michael North can easily sign up for the feed program, get the training, and be allocated land. On the project care, though, what you would find is that this is a faster process because you're not talking about acres upon acres of land. You're talking about a quarter acre to an acre of land. But equally, people in rural and urban Barbados don't have to have land, and that's the most important part. We are using a system which is called the Green Machine that was developed by Dr. Charleston Bradford. And that machine gives you an opportunity to use aquaponics. So you can do your tilapia fish, and then because it's a revolving system, then the water can go up to your plants as well. So you can plant cucumber, you can plant lettuce, etc. And that gives you an opportunity to have 2 bites at the cherry by being able to do fish harvesting and crops as well. And that can be replicated across urban Barbados. We have asked to have available to us 10 for each constituency in Barbados, which gives us a total of 300 that will be available to us. And those obviously will be on the project here, where the chairman and his team, working with the Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Care, will be able to determine who will be the recipients of those systems. And then we've just received out of a total of 50. We've just received 15 shade houses from Guyana. 16 shade houses, the PS is telling me, which will be set up here in Barbados. And again, they will be part of the feed program, where we have included schools as well, because we want to make sure the schools are participating in agriculture. And those shade houses will be used in schools. They'll be used at layers, some at Pine Basin, and of course within the feed program itself to those farmers who want to take a new approach to farming rather than the traditional open field approach. So there are several options, but I would let the officers at BADMC speak more about Project CARE and the feed program to update you, and then the Chief Agriculture Officer will speak to our accelerated growth program.
Hi, good morning. My name is Frederick Innes, CEO acting at the BADMC. I'll speak first to Project CARE, Honourable Member. Over the course of the last year and a half, we've worked with the BAMC to actually provide access to persons who have either small gardens or have areas within their control that they want to bring into agricultural production. So we've provided land clearing, access to some of the implements, as I mentioned. I think the objective there is to bring and make accessible to those who want to start on a small scale and encourage them along as best we can. So we've been working with BAMC in terms of the available tractor resources. We've also have an officer who's working with the various constituency offices to identify where those persons are and try to ensure that we can engage with them as best we can and facilitate that interest to encourage them along what we call household food security, as opposed to the idea of commercial or national food security. I think in relation to the technology question, as the Minister mentioned, there is a current push to look at some of the small scale technological solutions that could be offered. And I think as we move ahead with that, we are going to be working with the CARE committee that has been established. Honourable Member Prescott is the chair of that, and we are working with himself, BAMC, to ensure that we have, one, a structured program to facilitate, but also two, mechanism to actually engage with those community groups who have that interest. In regards to the feed program, over the course of the last 18 months, I think, we have had a significant push, both on the front in terms of training. To this point, we've trained just over 880 persons through the feed program. The major limiting factor, I think also was mentioned, is the access to lands. Whilst we have a land bank available to us, a number of those areas do pose challenges for agricultural production, water in particular, as you mentioned, but also to the slope of the lands, needing to ensure that persons can actually utilize the lands effectively. So we have been working to allocate persons throughout those plantations that we have care of. And the current total who have been allocated to this point is 252 persons across 343 acres of land in various districts. That would include a few new districts that we've essentially re-established or returned to agriculture over the course of the last year and a half. Bath, we've introduced a small group to the Wakefield area, also in St. John. We've re-established the Mount Poya plantation and established about 90-odd acres there for persons to actually farm and to utilize. So there has been a concerted effort to bring what would have been previously fallow lands, previously unused lands, back into agriculture, back into operation. So that has required a significant investment of time, obviously, and funds. The major challenge, obviously, still remains water, and facilitating that is a critical input for agriculture. I think, unfortunately, we can't get around it, so we work closely with the BWA, both at present in terms of delivery of water. We have been facilitating that from a couple of our existing wells, but also to in relation to identifying new resources going forward. I think at present there is an exploration that we're hoping can get started in St. Lucie to identify access there that might benefit those in the Mount Poyer and also the existing Spring Hall land lease project. So those two critical areas, I think working with the BWA are the direction that we need to move in to improve that water access. Thank you.
As it relates to domestic production overall, first of all, as Mr. Ennis would have indicated, we have a mandate to address food security not only at the household level, but at the national level, which is farming. So at the household level, we're talking about backyard gardening, small scale. At the national level, we're talking about farming as a profession. So the CARE program deals with household security. Then we have the FEED program, which was introduced in 2018 to specifically add to persons or invite persons who were interested in agriculture but didn't have the knowledge or the resources. So that caters to new entrants. Now we are developing a new program called the Feed Accelerated Growth Program, which now is going to cater to experienced or existing farmers. And the focus of the Feed Age program is twofold. We want to target the top 12 items on our CARICOM 25 by 25 list. Now these items are broccoli, onion, carrot, lettuce, cabbage, sweet pepper, tomato, watermelon, pumpkin, cauliflower, celery, and cantaloupe. And these items require a certain level of grower skill to be very efficient at them. And naturally, the more experienced farmers who've had years in farming have a lot of those skills already. They just need the required assistance to be able to grow and move faster with them. So they're in a position where they can accelerate a lot quicker than feed farmers who are now coming into the system, who are now learning the microclimate of their area where they're farming and who are now having the experience of growing different types of crops at different times of the year. So that's the first thing about the feed program. The Feed Age program, sorry. The second aspect of it would also be to focus on starting to drive exports again. And the item that we identified was sweet potatoes, largely because one, it was the second largest product that we grow in Barbados outside of sugarcane. So when it comes to experience in growing sweet potatoes, we have more of that than any other product other than sugarcane. Additionally, it allows all players, big and small, to participate in the program. Why is it important to export in addition to focusing on our national food security? The top 12 items that I just highlighted, if we are able to grow them efficiently in Barbados, they would only require just less than about 400 acres of land. We have more arable land than that, and we want to maximize our agricultural production. So we don't want to limit farmers and say, well, this is all the size of the domestic market, so you can't grow. We want to make sure that they have the capacity to grow beyond whatever or to whatever scope that they wish to do so, because agriculture is a key economic driver, and key for the agricultural sector is to get that growth moving again. So specifically as it relates to these crops, the other aspect of that is ensuring that we have sufficient storage of these items, and this is where a pack house comes in. Now, one of the things in stabilizing the gluts and shortages that we tend to have in the domestic market is that we need to be able to have some kind of warehousing facility to be able to hold product. If you think about it, all the business that we do in the world today, you are purchasing stuff off of Amazon or wherever you're purchasing from. It's not coming directly from the manufacturer, it's coming from the warehouse. So what this allows us to do by having more pack house capacity is that farmers get to grow at the time that is ideal for farmers to grow. And we're able to hold and store, and then buyers and consumers get the product at the time that's ideal for them to buy. So you create that buffer area. So having an expanded pack house would allow us to have the capacity to hold and store more produce to be able to supply Barbados and reduce the issues of gluts and shortages. So we would have engaged with the Barbados Chamber of Commerce, as well as met with the major farmer groups in Barbados who grow crops, and the major experienced farmers as well to get their feedback and to discuss with them whether or not they were interested in having a program such as this. We got overwhelming support from the Chamber of Commerce indicating that yes, they are prepared and interested in buying local. And likewise, we have farmers who are committed and very interested in expanding their production. They just need the required framework to be able to do so. So we have the pieces. The thing really was to start to put it together. And again, just coming back to the pack house, one of the reasons why that is so critical is that the rule of thumb is that for every hour that you have produce that you don't remove the field heat after you harvest them, you lose a day of shelf life. So when we talk about food loss, we're not just talking about what we throw away, we're talking about high post-harvest losses, which can be as high as 55% in developing countries such as Barbados. So again, putting that facility in place is a critical piece of infrastructure to allow farmers to extend their shelf life, to be able to sell as much as they grow and not have to throw away large portions of it. So now coordination of agricultural production will make more sense because you have a facility in there that can facilitate the holding and storage of this. So these are the key tenets of the program. And along with that, we're also providing technical support so that farmers would be able, first of all, to increase their productivity. That was one of the things that was highlighted. So not only do we want to increase production, but we want to increase productivity. So how many pounds per acre are you getting? What is the quality of the product per acre that you're getting? You want to be able to maximize that. And then additionally, what you want to be able to do is to ensure that you have the technical support in terms of if you're going to export, you need to meet the international standards. The typical standard is referred to as Global GAP. There are a number of standards, but Global GAP is an international standard, and it's pretty much like visa, once approved, accepted everywhere. So we are going to be providing technical assistance in the form of a food safety consultant who would be able to guide farmers on what is needed to become Global GAP certified. For export, we're providing technical assistance in terms of boosting and supporting our extension and research support by having consultants in from Florida. And so we are building out our capacity because when we talk about wanting to be excellent and moving our farmers to the next level, we want to be able to provide those supporting structures to allow them to do that. Thank you.
Yes, we will move to the next level, Chief.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. And I will end the same way that I began, Mr. Chairman, by congratulating the Minister and his team. The responses were excellent and very informative, and I believe that the people of Barbados can now share and join with me in the confidence that they have in this Minister and his team in putting us on the right footing relative to our agriculture and our food and nutritional security. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence, and I reserve the right to come back in. I have one more question with your permission later on. I reserve the right to jump back in at some point in time. But thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe it was during the signing of the loan for the Scotland Road Rehabilitation Program that the Prime Minister would have mentioned her intention to set up a Scotland District Authority for the purpose of managing the lands in the Scotland area, especially as it relates to soil erosion and land slippage, which are problems that still exist in that area today. Can you give me some insight as to where we have gotten with that Scotland District Authority?
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yes, we are working on the legislation for the Scotland District Authority. We have engaged one of Barbados's most eminent attorneys to help us with that legislation. It is with him, he's going through the details of it. This is legislation that was passed in this honourable chamber in 2007, but it was never proclaimed. Since then, a number of things have changed in the Scotland District. what we at the ministry are doing, we're looking at the true role of the Soil Conservation Commission as it relates to the Scotland District, and then the role of the MTW as well. And coming out of that, then we would determine how it's going to be structured, and the legislation will be amended to suit what we are doing. And the attorney is currently well on the way and working with us and making sure that we can bring that to Parliament as well. First, I have to take it back to Cabinet, as you well know, and all of that will happen also by summer of this year.
Thank you, and I truly look forward to that. Most of my questions will be related to St. Andrew. St. Andrew used to be considered, certainly in the glory days of sugarcane cultivation, as one of the areas of outstanding production. In fact, I think St. Andrew was one of very few parishes to had 3 active sugar factories during the 50s and 60s. And it could have been considered then, and to some extent now, to be listed amongst the bread baskets, as a bread basket here in Barbados. But today, large swaths of land, certainly in the Turners Hall area and Bawden's area, has been allowed to fall into bush. Can you just share with us here some of the plans for those areas? And while doing so, you can also expand a little bit on the agro part that you would have alluded to, that you have planned for the Bawden's area.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Yeah, there are several plans in place for the Scotland District. I must say to you that we cannot just take the same approach that we would take with other parts of Barbados, because we have to be very careful with the slope of the land and slippage that can take place. I will let the Chief Agriculture Officer address that and speak in more details to how we are going to utilize the Scotland District. But before I do so, I would ask Mr. Innes to give you an update on the project at Bawden's.
All right, thank you, Honourable Member. In relation to the Bawden's Park, we actually have received funding approval in the coming year's budget to actually progress that project, and some funding that obviously will be quite critical to developing the infrastructure. We would have spoken in your other role in relation to getting the roads into the space, and that is something we are working to actually have escalated now that the rains have eased off a bit. So I think we are definitely at the stage of showing greater momentum in that regard. The basic maintenance of the space has been established, and I know there is a continuing plan to actually have what would be a community space retained. Our objective over the course of the development would be eventually to transition to the community groups to actually help to run and operate the space. The central feature of the Bawden's Park will be the development of an aquaculture ponds. The intention there is to work with a few private sector partners to actually build out what would be termed or in other jurisdictions as a fish and pay structure. The idea being that we would, through that partnership with the private party, populate the pond, have a culture program in place so that there's a continuing regrowth of fish, but also too that you would have a structured way for persons in the district to come relax in the area and to fish at their leisure. I know recreational fishing is a big thing for a number of persons, but it's a new project or concept that's being introduced in an interior pond. So I'm hoping that we can have that concept and the full development completed before the end of the current coming financial year. We have, as I said, the funding, and the design has been outlaid. So we really just need to get started, and that is our commitment to work on that front. Thank you.
Yes, as it relates to plans for the Scotland District in terms of agriculture, the Scotland District is and St Andrew in particular, as it takes up the majority Scotland district, is very delicate. And that is one of the things that we've learned over the years. Coming off of a number of studies, about 50% of the land in the Scotland district is slipping or sliding at any given time. It is prone to a huge amount of erosion. And while, yes, 40 or 50 years ago, we were engaged in a lot of sugarcane agriculture, when you look at the Scotland district, the recommendations even from the 1970s was that we needed to focus more on agroforestry and planting more trees to stabilize the land. How we cultivate in the Scotland district then becomes very critical. It's not just a case of going to plant. We have to make sure that we use the right types of conservation measures. We need to move away from plowing up and down the hills and doing more contour type of plowing, terracing, those types of things. Now, of course, that is an expensive venture and it is a slower venture. The Scotland district is not necessarily the place that we want to try and push the fastest type of agriculture, because we have to be careful with it as a resource. And in fact, it makes up part of our natural heritage, our national park. So with that in mind, we need to start to refocus the position of the Scotland district in terms of agriculture. The other aspect of that is that the Scotland district also does not have a lot of wells, which you would see in other parts of Barbados because of the nature of the soil there. So without a significant irrigation source, other than the ponds that we're now installing, we've already installed one at Haggaps, as Minister Weir indicated. We have the one at Bawdens, which we are expanding. So there needs to be ongoing work to be able to move that runoff water and put it into catchments. And again, that also aids with the slippage and the erosion that we tend to get. So part and parcel of that then means that we need to look at an agricultural structure that focuses on fruit trees, that focuses on conservation. It focuses then on ensuring that we're moving water into catchments. These have to be the basic tenets of how we design any agricultural program for the Scotland district. It also means that in terms of land clearing, if we want to do a farming enterprise, we don't want to go into the Scotland district and clear huge amounts of land at a time and leave it then without vegetation, because that in itself then creates its own erosion. So even as you may be setting up a fruit tree orchard, for example, you may not want to clear more than half an acre or acre at a time because you want to ensure that the land remains stable. We've seen a significant amount of erosion, especially around the Turners Hall area. And yes, you've seen more trees going back in, but in fact, the benefit in Scotland district as an ecotourism site is that it is now reforesting. And so that forestry is also an agricultural resource. So not every aspect of agriculture has to be for food. Forestry as an agricultural product also means that there's value then to develop true ecotourism experiences, tying agriculture to tourism, nature-based hikes, fruit tree picking, these types of things. So you have an opportunity to develop a more hybrid type of approach. And in fact, we've started to see that already right on the St. Joseph edge. You do have, I think it's Cocoa Hill Forest that is starting that model. Those are the types of models that represent more sustainable practices. You have Walker's Reserve that is also speaking to those types of models. So we need to be delicate with the Scotland district. It needs to be developed in such a way that is consistent with good conservation measures, and that we don't rush to do more intense types of agricultural production on one hand, and then on the other hand, we are creating a problem where we're damaging then or adding to the erosion problems that we have in the area.
Thank you. My next question has to do with the fact that within maybe 3 or so weeks, we will have a number of in many cases, young persons who will be transitioning from contractual work to entrepreneurship. And a number of those young persons from W, National Housing, they have expressed interest in pursuing careers in agriculture. Can you speak to how you have or you intend to engage these young persons and some of the programs that you have in place to pretty much train these young persons who will be transitioning from work to self-employment?
Yes, there is a specific program that we are doing. The BADMC is working with the ministry that is responsible, so that, well, the two ministries, so that those persons who have expressed an interest in getting into agriculture will be facilitated. And there's a project with a project budget that the BADMC is working on, and Dr. Andrela or Mr. Innes can give you the details on where that is at and how it's going to be done.
Before you proceed, gentlemen, just let me ask members, when you're responding to a question, we're having sometimes difficulty in hearing your response. You speak directly to the chair, which means that you have to come closer to your mic instead of necessarily looking at the person who has posed the question. It makes it a lot easier for everyone to hear what is actually being said. Thank you very much.
In relation to the project that has been established in conjunction with the Ministry of Housing and the Ministry of Transport and Works, we have actually created a structure wherein persons who are transitioning out of those programs will be afforded a combined training and placement program. The outline, I think, covers 24 weeks of both virtual and physical in-person training, and the actual development of their proposed agricultural enterprise. That program, I think, has already been launched in a number of instances with the Ministry of Education already in a number of areas. The portion for the Ministry of Agriculture, I think, will commence in truth at the end of their transition period. I believe it was indicated as March 31st. So the actual placement and engagement with those individuals will commence shortly thereafter.
Over the years, we have seen the dwindling away of a lot of our agricultural land. We have lost some to commercial development. We've lost a lot to residential development. And we continue to lose some.
This is a follow-up question, Honourable Member.
Yeah, it is.
Because you exceeded your questions, you know that.
Sorry, it's a follow-up question.
Please indicate that. Thank you.
Sorry. And my question basically is, given the dwindling nature of our agricultural resources in terms of land, what are some of the land strategies that you've put in place, including some agricultural techniques and some new methodologies that you've put in place to fully exploit what little land we have in order to safeguard our food security, perhaps expand our trade, and certainly safeguard the health of our nation?
Yes, as it relates to how we're going to maximize the use of the limited land we have, you're absolutely correct. In the late 1960s, I think it was, we had about 50,000 acres in arable land. According to the physical development plan, we are down to about 28,000 acres up to 2017. So we are seeing a decrease in the amount of arable land. However, over that period, we have also been seeing an increase in productivity as well in particular crops. And that's where productivity comes in, because what you can see with increase in agricultural productivity, typically over the last 40 or 50 years globally, agricultural productivity has tripled, while at the same time seeing a use in about 28% less land, and 76% less labor. This is important because all over the world, and agriculture is no different. It's no different from other industries. Efficiency is becoming key. And there are new technologies both in the open field as well as under protected structures that speak to growing more efficiently. In the open field, everything can be mechanized from planting to harvest, and there are small scale types of tools as well that allow small farmers to be able to mechanize their operations significantly. Appreciate that not every type of crop can be mechanized. Or should be, not every type of crop would be able to be grown in efficiently in open field versus in protected structures. So particularly in open field, for example, you're going to get maximum productivity of things like onions and carrots. But then there are products that have demonstrated that they're ideal to grow in under protected structures, particularly sweet peppers, colored peppers in particular, the reds and yellows and oranges lend themselves to growing in under protected structures. So we've got new types of technologies coming in from shade houses, which we would have mentioned we are receiving from Guyana. You also have technologies in terms of vertical types of farming. You've got different types of combinations of aquaponics now that can be pioneered. Other crops that are ideal for growing in those types of structures would be lettuces, tomatoes, some types of cucumbers as well are ideal. But beyond that, there are other types of technologies that we're looking to pilot. So we have had at least one demonstration so far at the Ministry of Agriculture utilizing drones for pesticide application. It may also be used for foliar feeding application. And we are also looking at robotics at our AgriFest, tent. Last Saturday, Friday to Sunday, we demonstrated as part of the Barbados Innovation Center for Agriculture the new FarmBot, which is a robotic arm that demonstrates how robotics is being used to automate the process of planting, weeding, watering. So we are starting to introduce those new types of technologies to Barbados. Obviously, we have to expound and investigate their effectiveness for farming to be able to guide farmers because they are costly. So we want to be able to walk with farmers on the journey and provide them with information and guidance on how best to use the technologies and maximize their return on their investment. But we are starting to pioneer that new aspect of digital technology. There are a number of other tools out there in digital agriculture that are really very exciting. And as we go through this year, we would look to see how many more of those things we can introduce. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Member for St. Peter.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I begin where maybe my colleagues have, and I think the Honourable Minister knows my views on the industry and on the performance. And I agree with the Honourable Member for St. Michael North that for too long an important sector has been treated as though it were not, and that it should be relegated to the periphery. But I think the Honourable Minister has brought it, along with his team, back to the center, which is where it ought to belong. And I think we cannot allow Barbadians to forget the COVID period, not for the illnesses, but for the reality of facing a situation where we could not import, but we still needed to eat. And recognizing that agriculture is and has always been important. As a person of faith, I believe that that was the first. I have colleagues who believe that the oldest profession is something different, but I believe that the oldest profession relates to tending the garden and taking care of it. I also want, in leading up to my first question, to commend both the feed and the care program. And I think those are initiatives that we really have to continue to push. And I say we because I recognize that this is not just a Ministry of Agriculture initiative to push. All of us have, those of us who are aware of it, have to keep pushing these, because these are the kinds of programs that will galvanize persons who may have a hint of interest to become more interested. A group that I am familiar with is currently benefiting from the CARE program, and I've also been able, in my ministerial capacity, to encourage faith-based organizations generally. We had a good meeting with those in the ministry responsible for that program, and we continue to encourage faith-based organizations to get engaged, because many of them have at least small plots of land that could be put to productive use to aid their parishioners, but also the wider society. The first question I have relates, though, to, it is a parochial one, the only parochial one. I think the minister would be expecting this. I may be disappointed if I didn't ask. But the folk in St. Peter and in St. Lucie, Mr. Chair, come to Spitestown, and many of them are going to be in Spitestown as we speak, and complain about what is seen as an eyesore set up to allow small entrepreneurs to earn a living, but over time has deteriorated in terms of the quality of the facility. And I speak to the market at the traffic lights on the Karen R. Husbands Highway junction with Church Street. The minister and I have been speaking about this over a period of time, but I would want to give him the opportunity, or any of his officers, as he identifies, to give to the public, particularly the public in the north, a status update on the plans for that market, because I know that there are plans, some update on the plans and what they can expect, we and they can expect to see in the not too distant future.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The project at Spitestown, where we have the kiosk established, two things are happening there. I would let the manager of markets and indeed the project manager within the ministry, Mr. Wayne Baker, to address them. But at our last estimates, we discussed Spitestown, and we agreed that after a refurbishment project has been completed there, we will look to further enfranchisement of the people up north by allowing for them to own the kiosks. And so we are looking at the legal approach to this, and this obviously will work then as a first project where we can look to see how the persons operating the kiosk can own them. And then that may be replicated where we have single units like those that don't fall under one of the public markets, but as a standalone. So what I'll do is ask Mr. Baker to address where we are with that project, and also the manager of markets.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, everyone. My name is Wayne Baker, Project Director in the Ministry of Agriculture. With respect to the project at Spitestown, we completed the designs and we had submitted drawings to the planning department last year. We received planning permission approval on the 15th of February this year. As a result of that, now we will have to go to tender with this project, but because of the time frame that it came within the financial year, we have to wait until the new financial year before we go to tender. So on that basis, and based on the tender process, we expect that construction can start sometime around July of this year, and the construction period is estimated at 10 months. In addition to that, what we are planning to do is for during the construction period is to provide the current vendors with temporary stalls that we are seeking to relocate at another part of Spice Sound, and we are in discussions with other agencies to accommodate that so that they will not be dislocated during the construction period. So that's where we are with that process, sir.
Thank you very much. I thought you'd indicated 2 persons, but
Mr. Sherlock King, the manager of markets, I don't know if he has anything else to add.
I'm Sherlock King, manager of markets. With respect to the legal aspects of handing over the stalls to the tenants at Church Street in Spikestone, we have already reached out to the Ministry of Housing so that we can have the legal aspects of that process sorted. And once we have completed that, we can begin to commence the necessary arrangements for those tenants to take possession and to maintain them and to use them as necessary. With respect to where we're looking at locating, we had a number of site meetings in Spikestone where we looked at a number of areas around the area. We do not want to put the vendors necessarily too far away from their general location to disrupt them in any adverse way. And we have identified a couple of areas, but we are also reaching out to a number of other state agencies where we can have their approval and permission and so on. And then we would commence meetings with the vendors to inform them as to what we're going to do and to hear from them and to involve them in this whole process so that they would be familiar and aware of the whole project that we're undertaking.
thank you very much. Just by way of comment, to say something that I've had cause to say, I think in every estimate session since the very first one, stakeholders expect that those who they elected are aware of what is going on. And so as you engage with stakeholders, I would expect, and will be demanding actually, I think I need to maybe ratchet up the language, that the member of parliament stays informed so that when the questions come, the MP is able to respond, as opposed to having them to, I don't want to give out your number or the project manager's number. The MP should be in a position to say, this is where we are, this is what was discussed, this is the way forward. And I just want to put that on the table, even though using the word demand, it was not meant to talk down or to shout, but to say in as strong a way as I could in this chamber that it makes sense because it will help to make your job easier and help with the rollout of the information. So thank you very much for the update, and we look forward to the developments there. The second question I have relates to nutrition security. We speak a lot about food security, and to be honest, and to expose some degree of ignorance until I heard the formulation of the ministerial portfolio. Nutrition security was not something that I had given much thought to. And my question is, what is the ministry's stance, actions, plans on the idea of nutrition security, which goes beyond, I know there was some discussion about what we in St. Peter call big grain rice, the sweet potatoes and that kind of thing. But I want to know, with respect to nutrition security specifically, what is the work of the ministry in that regard? It is of interest to me because NCDs and health-related matters are important, generally speaking, And there are those who, because of my faith as a Seventh-day Adventist, identify people like me almost only by the day on which we worship and the foods that we do not touch. So health is important, and I would be interested in hearing something from the ministry in relation to nutrition security.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Just to give you the assurance that in going forward, anything that the ministry is doing that would impact any of the MPs in this honourable chamber, it is expected that all of you will be kept abreast of what is happening. And if on any occasion we should fall short, please let me know so that we can have it rectified. I think all the officers in the ministry are on board and making sure that all MPs are kept abreast of what is happening, and we will make sure that that happens. In terms of nutrition, the ministry, first of all, we are tracking our Sustainable Development Goal 2, and we are working along with the FAO in making sure that we can keep up with what is expected. But the Chief Agriculture Officer has also been doing work, and I would allow her to respond to what we are doing and how we are setting about to achieve nutrition security.
Honourable Member, thank you so much for that question. Because, of course, you know, we have worked very hard as a nation to reduce hunger in Barbados, and currently hunger is below 5%. However, overnutrition, which is also a form of malnutrition, is at near crisis levels with about 52.4% of adults, and 1 in every 3 children overweight or obese. And what we've seen with obesity is mainly due to the overconsumption of ultra-processed, energy-dense foods, and especially empty-calorie foods, which are generally low cost. And it means then that we see a significant impact in the most vulnerable. But there are also other major factors such as insufficient exercise and genetics that add to this. The thing about it is, for the Ministry of Agriculture, nutritional security is a partnership with the Ministry of Health and Wellness. There are 2 aspects of nutritional security, and we have to look at both how people eat, the types of foods that they're going to eat, and how they put those foods together. And that is where the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the National Nutrition Center comes in, and they do quite a bit of work, part of which we showcased again at AgriFest this year, looking at the nutrition plate and how you should put that food together. So it's a partnership between the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Nutritional Security. Where agriculture's intervention comes on nutritional security is the focus on nutritional quality, and specifically how food is grown and how it is processed. Now, over 100 years ago, for most of the world's population, nutritional quality of food was superior and access was inadequate. But now, today, we actually see it the other way around, where you've got access to a lot more food, but it's poor in nutritional quality. So, on the agricultural perspective, we want to be able to ensure that we are growing foods with maximal nutritional quality. Now, we have talked about increasing productivity and getting higher yields, and sometimes in the development of the genetics for those things, or the development of genetics for particular breeds, we may not be focusing as much on the nutritional quality. The other thing is how foods are grown. So, for example, Barbados, we are on a calcium limestone rock. Our pH is roughly between 7.5 and 8.0 in our soils. What this means is that we lock up a lot of the magnesium in the soil. So if we grow foods and we don't make sure that we have a balanced nutrition in the soil, it means that you may not be getting the same amount of magnesium from one farm plot as from another if that person is actually following a balanced nutrition program for their plants. So this is where the advice towards farmers and encouraging them to make sure that they do their soil testing, they try to apply the right amount of composition of organic matter as well as fertilizers to ensure that you have a balanced soil, and so doing, when you grow your crops, you're going to get balanced nutrition. And the same thing applies as it relates to growing livestock. You can give, and I am aware that You may have farmers, especially when the cost of feed is high, supplementing with alternatives, things like bread, etc., to just get the animal calories. But the same way that if we don't eat a nutritious diet, we are not going to be as healthy, even if we get the certain amount of calories. The same thing for livestock, also for milk, dairy. So what we feed the animals, what we put into our soils matter with how the final product of the fruits or vegetables or the meat turns out and the nutritional quality of that. So that is where the work of the Ministry of Agriculture and Food and Nutritional Security has to focus, to ensure that you have maximum nutritional quality in every bite. And that's where our emphasis is going to be. Thanks.
Chair,
Permanent Secretary is going to add a bit to that.
and to add to what the Chief Agriculture Officer just said, it's not only trying to achieve nutritional security through, the planting of the food and the attending to the soils, but the very institutional arrangements that I spoke to earlier helps to support this. The food security aspect of it can be achieved through producing more. Another component of this that we often ignore is the concept of food sovereignty. And I maintain that it is through achieving food sovereignty that you are perhaps in a better place to achieve the nutritional aspect of the agenda. And by that I mean, when these institutional arrangements are in place where you're in control of your own seeds. I am not an agriculture scientist, but I tend to watch BBC every morning, and in recent times, I don't know if it was preparing us for today, but in recent times we've been seeing a lot of programs with respect to farming and agriculture. And one of the things that keep coming through is the importance of having control over your own seeds to avoid the chances of being impacted adversely through the process of modification of the seeds. The germplasm bank that we made reference to will allow us to have control over our own planting material and those kinds of things, so that we would be really determining what it is that goes into the ground, to some extent, or to a large extent, what comes out of the ground. And therefore we have more certainty and guarantee regarding what goes into our body, because we were in charge from the beginning in terms of the various seeds and materials that we would have utilized. So it's the planting more, but in terms of the nutritional security, I believe that some of the institutional arrangements also allow us to achieve that through guaranteeing food sovereignty.
Thank you very much. My final question probably relates more to my ministerial responsibility, and it crossed my mind listening to the presentation this morning. We have ladies and gentlemen who leave Barbados on an annual basis as part of a seasonal agriculture workers program. And I started to wonder if, and the background to my wondering this is transposing my thinking from tourism, where I've always felt that persons who come in, and we've had a lot of success with that as concerned, but persons who come in on work permits share their skills and experience to build the capacity here on the island. And I'm wondering if there's any possibility or any plan for persons who work outside of Barbados in agriculture. I know some of them already work locally in agriculture, but is there any plan, any structured mechanism for obtaining any expertise or skills that they may have either been a part of or seen to help agriculture in Barbados? And I'm asking that also from the perspective of just using our experiences to possibly improve our practices.
Chair, I will say a little towards that, and then I'm sure the others who are more versed will follow. But it is interesting because only 2 days ago, I had the opportunity to have a conversation with a gentleman who came to pay a courtesy call on the minister, but the minister was unavailable because he was here attending to another ministry's presentation. This is a gentleman by the name of Professor Magamutu from McGill University in Canada. And he came to see me because from his interaction with the Canadian High Commissioner here, they were looking to see how they could augment the Canadian Farm Labor Program so that persons not only leave Barbados, go to Canada, work in agriculture there, earn money, and bring it back to Barbados. But they recognize that there is an opportunity to develop a broad program throughout the region, including Barbados. They want Barbados to be the main driver of it, which is why he came to see the minister. And the whole idea is that when the persons go up to Canada, they're not just go and pick apples and fruits, but they're also exposed to the technologies that are used in those countries, that are used in Canada in particular, with the view that when they return home, it was not just a working experience, but a training experience, and that they can then use the knowledge that they acquired there to help advance the cause, the agriculture cause in Barbados. So I was glad to engage him because it was an interesting dimension. I have relatives that would have benefited from that program over the years, and it has always been seen as one where you go to work, earn money, and return home without bringing back home any of the skills that you could have acquired while you were working there. So I look forward to being part of that project, and I gave the commitment to the Professor Magamutu on behalf of the ministry.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Thank you, Minister and team. Honourable Member for Christchurch West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Minister, you know, when I look at the tremendous work that you've been able to achieve in agriculture, I had a myriad of questions to ask, but unfortunately, we are only limited to 3. I could have started with cannabis. I could have moved on to mariculture. We could have talked about plans for the sugar industry, poultry, the tremendous work that you're doing in Guyana. There's so many things and so many exciting programs that you are doing, and I must commend you and your team for really taking charge and getting down to the job and getting things done for the people of Barbados. I think that is absolutely commendable, and you've shown tremendous leadership in the ministry, and I'm happy that I can give assistance when necessary. And even although we butt heads from time to time when I was Minister of Housing, because, you know, there's always this difference between where you can put a house versus where you can put food agriculture. And, you know, some people think that you should grow food, and others feel that land is for growing houses. So sometimes you need to find that balance, and I think that is what it's about on that small land space that we have. But I want to focus now on the layers allotment gardens. As you know, that was something that I was very interested in and helped to pilot and so on. And I do see it developing. It has a long way to go. But I want you to update on that. But in particular, the water catchment area. Because I thought by now I would have seen that full or almost full. I mean, in my mind, I could see the roadways. I can see when it's mature, people would have their garden houses, and people would have the water irrigation and be able to pass through. And it becomes not only a place for people to grow and have an opportunity, but also to recreate. And that was my idea. And also, I don't know if there would be some fishing involved in the pond, all these things on what the opportunities were. But if you could update on the layers allotment garden, I would be happy.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The layers project in itself is being managed through the BADMC, so I would allow the BADMC to give you an update, a full update, including what is taking place with the reservoir.
Thank you, Honourable Member. In relation to the allotment gardens, we have actually reached the stage where the lands are being prepared. This weekend, actually, there is some activity to control the weeds that are in that area. We anticipate another 2 to 3 weeks before the water will start to flow from that and to allow the irrigation network to be actually utilized. We have been in discussion with the contractor in terms of the progression of that work. There have been some delays, unfortunately. As I mentioned before, the rainfalls that we would have had not only impacted agriculture, but also the construction efforts that were underway. The irrigation network is, I would say, about 80% laid. The commercial area has been covered. They are, in fact, in the process right now of putting down the irrigation network for the allotment gardens. Once that is complete, our irrigation extension unit is actually ready and waiting to put in the meters that we have already in stock. So we are just working with the contractor to actually complete that process as quickly as we can. We had actually started the process of engaging with a number of persons, both on the allotment side and the commercial side, to begin their placement. So persons have been shown where they propose to be placed. The timelines for that, as I mentioned, we don't want to position persons and then have them waiting for an inordinate amount of time before they can actually start planting. So we're just trying to balance that process as well as we can, and we're constantly in contact with the contractor. So the current timelines, including the certification from the government electrical department, I believe, puts us at that 2 to 3 week time frame for the majority of the physical work. The actual land preparations, as I mentioned, are also underway, so we would want to have those lands ready and available immediately. The water is available as well. Sorry, in terms of the number of allotments, it's just over 100. I think it's 110 allotment gardens that are being made available. Between the sizes are 5,000 and 10,000 square feet of actual space that each person will be allocated. The commercial plots are obviously larger, 1 to 2 acres. Those ones, I think we've already completed, as I said, on the commercial side, so we're just waiting for those connections to be made available. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry. The Minister actually asked to give a little more information in terms of the meters. We actually are piloting at the Lears location the use of a prepaid system. Historically, unfortunately, we've had some challenges in terms of water balances and the collection of water rates. Moving towards a prepaid solution I think fundamentally eliminates that. Persons establish, okay, we want to do X, they put their funds into an electronic payment system, their meter is turned on, and they can utilize it for however period they wish. If it is something that they want just for the week, they can make those payments in that fashion, or if they want to prepay for a period, again, that is at their volition and their discretion. So we, I think, have identified solutions that once we are able to pilot and test at that location, we believe can be translated into other areas where we operate irrigation networks, but I think this is quite novel. It is something I think in our research has been implemented in Africa as well, but these particular units were supported by our existing irrigation partners in terms of identifying the solution, and the electronic network that would cover would be located at the actual layers location to ensure the collection of data and the control of those units. The actual pond itself, well, I'll speak to the actual level of the water as well as the plan for the use of the water. The water level, as I mentioned, we would have had a significant rainfall period during the course of the end of 2022. At this stage, we can't speak to what the actual levels would be on an average year. The anticipation, though, is that given the catchment area that is in, that 21 million is a reasonable target. The actual completion of the lining and et cetera, we would have missed out on the first part of that period in 2022. So we will now need to, through experience in 2023, because typically that St. Thomas, St. Michael area has actually a quite heavy and high rainfall amount. And so we would anticipate that in the current year, we would see that catchment go to its maximum. The proposal is for the utilization of some portion of that pond catchment for the development of aquaculture as well. At present, we are developing a pilot, again, to implement and introduce a form of catfish called the Pangasius catfish. The feedback that we've gotten from our neighbors to the south is that that is one of those high-value freshwater culture options that we can pursue. And we are working with both partners in Guyana, but also we've reached out to experts in Jamaica who have developed similar ponds in Jamaica as well, and are actually actively operating commercial ponds in that country. So the timelines that we have started to build out would see us start sometime in April, and with an objective of getting to some form of harvest by, I think it's September, October of this year. So again, using that to demonstrate the actual capacity of the pond, we would be using floating cage structures in the pond itself so that it would be able to utilize the space without interfering with the operations of the irrigation operation. And so the actual build out of that, we are now in the process of drafting up those plans. So once that is settled, we would be hoping to launch that, as I mentioned, in April of this year.
Very, very exciting plans, and I look forward to seeing it, and I look forward to seeing the reservoir at a higher level, because whenever I pass there, I say, but I thought that by now they would be at a higher level. Both of the reservoirs, actually, because, I also visit the one at River as well, and I found that the level is a little lower than I would have anticipated by this time, but I will keep an eye on it. Yeah. The second question, Mr. Chairman, that I'd like to move into, and obviously it is also related, because obviously you wouldn't want people planting at their allotment and come back the next day and not see things there that they planted. So I wanted to ask about the Protection of Agricultural Products Bill. I think you brought that to this Parliament in 2022, the Act, and I will ask when is your intention to have that matter proclaimed?
A couple of things with that legislation. Yes, it was passed in both houses, and it also was assented to by the President, and we also had it gazetted. The next portion is the proclamation, which would take place on the 6th of March, and that work is already taking place with the CPC. The legislation did allow for us to have an arrangement with the Barbados Police Service, so that within the Barbados Police Service, we will have a unit established that would help us. That unit, the Commissioner of Police has advised that it has been resuscitated, and the unit will have a combination of policemen and indeed island constables, and they have already started patrols. They were out last weekend, and they will continue the patrols. It's called Operations Bird Eye, and they are usually around farms that tend to have problems with periodic larceny. But equally, they will be engaged right across Barbados so that we can make sure that we assist the farmers. And then if you were at AgriFest, you would have seen that we had drones on display. We are going to be also using drones as part of the surveillance methodology. And then we have to have intelligence as well. So a lot would depend too on people giving us information. But we are using the Barbados Police Service, and we are using the drones as well. to be able to help us to deal with the issues of prairie larceny.
Thank you very much, Minister. Of course, you know, I am a drone enthusiast as well, and I'm happy to see that, that drones are coming into being used in the mainstream, not only in the Ministry of Agriculture, the Police Service, but also in other ministries that I'm encouraging a drone unit to get involved with as well. So that is the way of the future. And clearly you are a minister focused on the future and bringing the ministry into the future and using all of the opportunities at your disposal, not only available in Barbados, but available in the wider world and all of the new technologies, and I commend you on that. And from that, I would like to follow on with my third and final question, Mr. Chairman. And rather than just those focused aspects, I want to can you give me a broad view of how you are reconstructing and by extent deconstructing and reconstructing the whole ministry to be able to achieve your objectives of food and nutrition security? Because clearly that is the way to look around and get towards the future. So give us a broad view of that. Thank you.
Honourable Member, I really want to thank you for that question. I think it is an extremely important one. This is a process that we started, I believe, back in 2020. You can't underscore enough the amount of time we lost during COVID in terms of getting things done. My permanent secretary, after we discussed this on numerous occasions in the ministry, actually engaged a consultant. And the consultant actually put forward a number of recommendations. And we do have a really outstanding plan for the deconstruction and reconstruction of the ministry, right across the entire ministry. And I would let the permanent secretary speak to that and the chief as well.
Thanks again, Minister, and through you, Chair. Before I actually respond to the question directly, I like to place things in context because I know, for example, we're hearing a lot of these words that our persons are considering now to become cliches. Deconstructing, reconstructing, fit for purpose, sometimes without even understanding what they mean. And I must say to you that when I first joined the ministry in May 2019, it was one of the first things I thought I should do, given the understanding that my role was more strategic than technical. And I'll just put it in perspective quickly. In 2009, 2010, the ministry was called the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development. 2014, 2015, Ministry of Agriculture, Food, Fisheries, Water Resources Management. 2022 and up to today, well, 2022, Ministry of Agriculture, Food and Nutritional Security. In 2018, 2019, we didn't have the nutritional security. So immediately what I noticed was that over the years, under successive administrations, the issue of nomenclature was the focus. You changed the title of the ministry based on the strategic direction the government had at the time, but really and truly, the structure never changed. And we know that it is not just in the private sector, but any entity. The reality is that structure should follow strategy. Or as people say, form should follow function. And it immediately jumped out to me that the two were not necessarily aligned, and hence the decision to get into the consultancy. We then brought on board one of the best HR minds in the country, Dr. Corbin from the University of the West Indies, who is not just an academic, but who, before becoming an academic, would have been president of the HR Association in Barbados. And in working with him, we developed a plan called a fit for purpose plan. Now, the question, and I will explain briefly so that the public too can have a better understanding, What do we mean when we say fit for purpose? And by fit for purpose, we're talking about taking efforts and to transform the internal structure of the ministry. Not just that, but the systems, the functions, the procedures, and most importantly, the culture that exists within the ministry and the character of the ministry, so that it ultimately becomes more flexible and is in a better place to serve the public, especially farmers. So that is it in a nutshell. How can we reposition agriculture so that the Ministry of Agriculture, so it becomes relevant in modern society? And significant work, as the minister said, has been done. You would imagine I don't have enough time to go through the entire document. It's voluminous, but the Fit for Purpose plan is rooted in the strategic policy direction of the ministry. It takes into consideration the commitment for results, which will now guide ministries, as you know, Minister. It takes into consideration various policies that were approved recently by the government of Barbados, in particular the agriculture production plan that was just referenced, as well as the agriculture and technology policy. I must admit that at the time when we first engaged Dr. Corbin, it was out of, I don't know if I'm not a youngster anymore, but I was new to the ministry. Some may say it was out of youthful exuberance. But the reality is that over time we recognized that we had to revisit it because other things happened. Agriculture is changing rapidly. We made a reference to those agreements that we signed with Guyana. We didn't even make reference to some of that we would have signed with countries like the People's Republic of China and even some of the African diaspora, like Kenya. So there was a need certainly to revisit that. Also, we would have lost one department, a major department, the meteorological department, that is no longer with the ministry. And there were some adjustments, as you know, Minister, even to our agriculture stations. I think Bullings Agricultural Station is now your responsibility. It's no longer ours. So as a result of that, we had to keep going back, looking at this thing. So it has taken some time. And the truth is, I know people say that the pursuit of excellence is often the enemy of progress. That may be true, but when you're making such a radical transformation, I think we would have to appreciate it takes time. It is a culture that we are trying to address here in order to make the ministry fit for purpose. So that essentially this plan now will propose about, is based on about 7 thematic areas, which would essentially be, constitute the names of the various departments based on our strategic goals. I wouldn't go through all, but one of the things that we decided to do was to not just look to see what new things we needed to bring, but how we can reconfigure some of the existing departments and sections that we have. I don't think that we would have had enough marriage among the internal elements of the ministry to maximize on the synergies that we can benefit from. So for example, you'll see a merge between extension and markets and agricultural resources and management, now that we're going into drones and GPS technology, agriculture research and development, agricultural trade, economic planning and projects. Projects right now stands alone as though it is just an appendage. It has to come from what I would say from the footnotes now into the main text and blend much better. But what is perhaps most exciting for me is that we are proposing the inclusion of a new department altogether that will address public relations and content management. I think that is where not only the Ministry of Agriculture, but several ministries in Barbados fall down, because we do not share our stories. We do not communicate as much as we should and as effectively as we should with the public that we serve. And we're hoping that through that department, we can do that. And The content management is important, not just giving information, but ensuring that the information is relevant, making sure that the information is coherent and cohesive, so that those who are taking in the information can make proper decisions. The restructuring will see, for example, under these new thematic departments, several new divisions. There was a need, and you would imagine based on what we discussed earlier, there's some new things that will be taken on, and we have to make sure we have a ministry that can respond to those new areas. You made reference to the aquaculture. Not new, but perhaps a greater emphasis now being placed on it. Mariculture, for example. We want to place more emphasis on apiculture, which is dealing with bees, etc. Extension services. We want to place more emphasis on extension services and the use of technology in agriculture. The new model also will try to embrace some, not all, and I want to make this clear. I know we talk a lot about the public service functioning like a private, like the private sector. I don't think that is so. The objective functions of the two are different. Private is focused on profit maximization or sales maximization, government welfare, well-being of citizens. So that government would engage in a project even if it has a negative net present value. And I keep saying to people, while we would try to eliminate as much of the bureaucracy as possible and the red tape as they refer to it, it is still there for a reason. It is a controlling mechanism that must remain within public institutions.
I will control this mechanism from here. You can just get 2 seconds.
But there's, right, so remember we are trying to transform, Chair, a ministry that has north of 450 persons. So it's difficult to put it all. But essentially, the whole idea, and you will see it, we are coming, I had promised the minister that I would have it with him by the end of this month. I didn't meet that, but it's with me. It was given to me by the end of the month, so we're going to review it, and I can assure you, I'm in Parliament, so I have to stick to this. I can assure you that it will be before Cabinet by mid-March. We have to review it very carefully, and it's very exciting because I believe that what we will propose has the potential to bring the Ministry of Agriculture into the 21st century. Thank you.
Yes, Honourable Minister. Part of developing a new structure for the Ministry of Agriculture, we first have to look at what is the future of food and agriculture going to look like, not just today, but what's it going to look like at least 10 years from now? So we have to look at that context. We have to look at the context of the role that agriculture plays in socioeconomic development. It plays both a social role as your allotment gardens, but it also plays an economic role. And then you have to also look at it in the modern functions of a Ministry of Agriculture. What are the things we are required to do in today's global world to meet our international obligations, whether it's WTO, whether it is our SDG obligations, etc. So we have a lot of different publics that we need to be able to meet. And you want to be able to design a sector, a new ministry structure that is responsive to that. We are also talking about the use of technology and how all of those things are going to impact. So specifically in looking at a new structure for the Ministry of Agriculture, we wanted to be able to encompass those aspects. But then additionally, we also want to be able to encompass the other side of it, which is the funding. How is it going to be funded? How is it going to work? What is going to be the effectiveness of it? And create a framework then that would allow for growth. So in this regard, as Permanent Secretary would have indicated, we're looking at some key things. One, specifically a facilitatory arm, and that's where research and extension and education comes in, because we know that agricultural productivity is driven by innovation. I know often we talk about innovation just in the context of maybe more computer science things, but more and more, and actually over the years, what you see driving agricultural productivity, agricultural growth is innovation. And that comes from research and extension. So there has to be a clear marriage of the two things. And there has to be strength in that. And that's going to facilitate the growth of the agricultural sector, which is what we need to see our economy grow overall. The other aspect of it is the regulatory role, which is then speaking to how do we manage our borders, how do we ensure and maintain the biodiversity of Barbados and of the agricultural sector, how do we provide the type of scientific services that are needed, diagnostic services that are needed to balance the growth from innovation, but at the same time, we need to temper it to make sure that everything that we're producing is safe for our people to consume. Everything that's being produced can meet international standards. So those are two key components. And the third big component that would come in there would also speak to the agricultural economic research surveys, economic planning. We need to be able to track what we don't measure. We definitely won't be able to see progress in. So we need to have that kind of economic focus as well, because agriculture is an economic sector and there are a lot of exciting technological things, but not every single thing that is exciting technologically will actually lead to growth in the sector. So it's to temper those things. So we've had to look at a number of things and start to pull together a structure that would speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister and team. I continue to keep a watching brief in this ministry. It is clearly doing wonderful and fantastic work, and all I can say is keep up the good work. And also, please look for those comments for planning and development and make sure I get them back on time. Thank you.
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, Honourable Member. I can assure you that your planning files should be coming back to you faster because I've changed the system. Those files no longer have to come to me as Minister. They go from the Chief Agriculture Officer straight back to you. So now if there are any delays, you have all calls to call me so that I can make sure that I remind the Chief that the process has been changed and therefore there should be no delays. Bear in mind, though, they were never delayed at minister's level. You go into my office now, you won't see a file unless it's placed there this morning.
Thank you, Honourable Minister and team. We're going to take one more question before we take a break. I could imagine we're going to go to the Honourable Member for St. Michael East.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. A very simple question, and probably it's on. Yeah, it's on. Yeah, a very simple question, but the conversation seems to be very incestual. In other words, we're involving a lot of interior knowledge being shared, but what I'm very concerned about is, based on many of the presentations, some people are saying that people are not, in fact, Dr. McLean, PS, and others are saying people are not inspired to be part and parcel of this industry and this discipline. And I think that that is something that you need to focus on. So although we talk about the structures that we have, and we talk about the laws that need to be changed and all of that, there's a major encumbrance, especially based on the history of agriculture in this country. And it has serious psychosocial and psychohistorical challenges, but even with all the technology. I know growing up as a boy, and that was long, long ago, I used to see people going to work on mornings in the field, but by force. There, in some cases, were not even paid properly.
although we would love to be able to pay them as much as we believe that they deserve, I certainly know that they pay a lot more than even when they were not even paid at all. While we talk with each other, that's probably why some people don't even understand when they use the word ancestral. In other words, we're talking to one another. We still need to have an intensive program that rather than talking to the general public at this specific time every year, and I want to compliment the government for having a structured system of this kind, where I can have the opportunity to make an assessment not only of myself, but an assessment of the good work of the ministry. As you have people in this ministry that are extremely intelligent and knowledgeable about the subject matter, probably more knowledgeable about the subject matter than some Christians are about Christianity and the Bible. And that's where you are at present. So I have no doubt about how much I admire the answers today. But my view is that you got to reach people. You got to reach workers. You got to reach potential workers. And because of these challenges, as people here, look, I have never had, in my political career, which was relatively long, I've never had a worker come and tell me they want a job at the Bell Lower State. Nothing so. Most of the times, they might get as far as sanitation. But nobody don't tell me they want to work in agriculture. So I'm saying that it means that you have now to reach out. And I'm asking you to put a program. You have some very noble and revolutionary type programs in the Ministry of Agriculture, and they're having some impact. But you can make quantum leaps in terms of productivity, even with all the limits and the financial constraints which you have. You can do that if you structure a good educational program and have a conversation on a regular basis with the people who need to be enlightened. And to drive those fears, you must drive those fears under. So you get more and more people now deciding, look, I want to get into this. It's not only self-sufficiency in the program, but people can have financial rewards. So you have to be able to encourage them. And I can give you the historical evidence. And when people were liberated in the 18th century in the Haitian Revolution, the biggest problem that the leaders had is after pulling them off the plantation, getting them to go back to the plantation. So you got to educate people about the fears which they have about agriculture. So I just want to at least comment, and to some extent, hopefully that it is impregnated with a question itself. Right? So thanks very much.
Honourable Member, I want to thank you sincerely for that comment, and because it allows for me to put a couple of things on the table that perhaps we can discuss in this presentation as well. First of all, at the BAMC, they had a system where when it rained, people didn't get to go over and they didn't get pay. We have brought an end to that. They had a system where you had two different types of pay packages, one for males and one for females. We brought an end to that, and really and truly, the CEO acting at BAMC can give the details, the CEO, at BAMC can give the details to that. But I also assure you that we also introduced bathroom facilities at the BAMC farms as well. And what is the message that we are really sending? We are sending a very clear message that we are conscious of the fact that there are people, human beings just like us, that are involved in agriculture. And those changes that we are making are designed specifically to reach people at that level, but equally induce more people to get involved simply because the facilities and the environment has changed enough that they can come and participate. The fact that a person doesn't get rainfall and their money nowadays is something that we really and truly cannot ignore. The fact that you don't have two different types of pay packages, one for males and one for males, is something that we really need to tell this country about. And we can go on and on, the development of the feed program, training people, then giving them all the inputs and doing a hand-holding exercise to keep them going is really reaching people and making sure people are involved. So I would like for us to continue this, Honourable Member. after lunch so that we can have a greater discourse on it and to allow for the CEO at BAMC to comment as well.
You wish the CEO to comment now, or? Yeah, let him give his comment now.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Orlando Adderley, CEO of BMC. I think certainly the sugar industry in particular has a very deep history of, it's been around almost 300 years. And as the minister pointed out, when we took over, or when after the last election, there were some inconsistencies or some challenges that the industry had, particularly around paying workers. We had situations where if rain fell, obviously no fault of yours, you did not get paid. Now, appreciate the fact that we were paying, the rate that is being paid in the industry has always been around the minimum wage. But what we have sought to do is obviously change the narrative at BMC by setting the standard for the other private farmers. So obviously moving away and done in away with the farm worker A and farm worker B, and obviously it was some level of discrimination, right? Same work, but one was female, one was male. The whole issue of you know, taking old buses without any sort of sanitary facilities and traditionally asking women in particular to go in the cane ground. I mean, it is something that's come up through the years. I mean, my own mother had that experience as she worked on a farm. So it was an initiative that for us was significant. Along with the fact too that on top of the work that we've been doing and obviously driving change within the industry is a project that was supported by the government 3 years ago called the NICAR project, which was created in the height of COVID. And it was used as a transition project. And what we have seen is that we started to change the face of people who want to enter agriculture. Obviously, some people want the tourism sector opened back, went back. But we've moved away now from obviously just seeing people coming into the industry as laborers. What we've done with our capital program is increase the number of tractors and then therefore move people to a level of the jobs you want to offer now are more of operators, mechanization, and moving away from labor. So we have made some changes, and obviously we continue to make some changes. We only recently, as an entity, put out new task rates. So what we're doing now is getting the workers to work on a productivity basis. And obviously it automatically increases your income. So what we are trying to do and continue to do is obviously lead the sector, particularly the sugarcane sector, sugarcane farmers and the things that we do and getting them to follow. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I beg to move that you do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker and beg leave to sit again.
The question is that I do now report progress to His Honour the Speaker, and ask for leave to sit again. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, we say no. We think the ayes have it.
Chairman has reported progress and requests leave to sit again. Honourable Leader of Government Business.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move that the House be suspended until 2 p.m. this afternoon.
The question is that this Honourable Chamber be suspended until 2 p.m. All those honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against it, please say no. Me think the ayes have it. This Honourable Chamber stands suspended until 2 p.m.